All right, welcome to the Former Falcons podcast. This is episode number 3. I am your host, Clinton Gardner, aka DJ Clint Dog. And don't forget to check out the Facebook page, the Falcons Facebook page. Give it a like and all that type of stuff. But the episode number 3, we're right here. We're doing something different this week, or this episode. I'm here with a very special guest, Tom Harvey. How are you, Tom?
Pretty good. It's good to be back.
Good to be back on the Falcons podcast. Now people will be thinking, who's Tom Harvey? He didn't play for the Falcons or anything like that. So let them know what's going on. Let them know who you are.
I came out about 30 years ago in the early 90s. And our head coach was Brian Stevenson. And the guy who sent me out was the same guy that sent out Eddie Whitmore and Eben Knox, too.
That was 1991?
91, yeah.
Yep. And you came out to play for the Hunters, the Siebel team.
Yes, yeah. So on the drive up, remember Brian Stevenson picked me up from the airport? He was saying, all right, well, things are different. There's 2 teams here in town. He said, there's the Falcons and there's the Hunters. And he said, we're the Hunters. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, all right. So the Falcons are in the National League, and the Hunters are in the Siebel. And all that. Yeah, so.
Yep. So Division 1, Division 2?
Yes, yep. That's what I figured.
Yep.
I figured that that was the NBL team, and the Hunters were their like development team,
feeder team or something.
Yeah, like a G League team, Yeah.
Yep.
So they would. I assumed that they were trained together, same coaching style, the whole same system. As I got into town and get to know everybody, it was like quite different. There was a us and them attitude.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize at the time, but the longer I was here, a couple of guys had mentioned about the lawsuit and all that and money problems, and apparently there was a bit of a court battle. So there was obviously 2 separate camps.
Yes.
And when I came to town too, it was pretty low morale too, because the Falcons had a bad year and the Hunters had a bad year too. And so people I talked to on the street or outside of basketball were saying, "Oh man, that's not going good. That's not going good." They're really down on it. And I just thought, wow, man, really negative town. So as the season went on, we had our first game in Campbelltown. We had a preseason game against the Canberra Gunners in West Sydney. Our first preseason game was at Minto Stadium. They just finished it. They just built it. And we went in there. We actually beat Canberra Gunners by 6 points.
Yeah.
And I remember coming on the way back. We're driving this 23-seater.
Yep.
And it was like we won the championship. Yeah. Like everyone celebrated. It was really, really good. And
wins were few and far between, man.
Well, I had no idea.
Yeah, they were.
About what happened before, but I remember that was my first introduction to the pisser phone, and I thought that was a beautiful, brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Because that is a way for guys to enjoy a few beers on the way back from the game, celebrate the victory, but not have to pull over either too.
Yeah.
So you had like a giant, like it was like a 10-liter pitch
bucket.
Drum. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really good because
was Dave Murray in charge of that? Was he the manager?
No. Warren was driving.
Oh, okay, yep.
Warren Carney, he was driving, so that was pretty cool.
Okay, yep.
He's the most down-to-earth, spot-on, sober guy you want to drive.
Yeah.
But we're all in the back. So everyone's like really jovial and celebrating and all that. And it's like, man. And our other import, Jeff, said, "Man, you all celebrating like it's championships."
Yeah. Honestly,
mate. I
mate.
said, "Hey, man, we just won as many games as we won last year in their first game."
Exactly.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Right.
Yeah, there wasn't many games that won the year before.
No, yeah.
The Falcons and Hunters. Yeah.
So there was like it's a pretty good morale going through there. And we just got our second import, Jeff Cummings.
Jeff Bubba Cummings.
And people don't realize how big he was.
He was from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yep.
Good Southern food. He probably hadn't played in a couple of years, but the guy was huge. He was like taller than me, my size, but it was like, he was like a Shaq.
A Norman Taylor build.
Yeah, but he probably didn't have the fitness or so.
Yeah.
But he was very, very opinionated. Yeah. He loved the team. He loved going out. Man, I'll tell you what, he knew how to entertain. And he was always very generous, too. That was a good thing. He was always very inclusive. But yeah, I think fitness-wise, if he could have got himself a bit more cardio, he probably would have done it better. Yeah.
Yep.
But it was really good vibes. You know, at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
We beat the AIS, first game of the season at home. We beat them handily, like by I think 15 points. And so it was a pretty positive write-up in the paperwords afterwards. You know, and Jeff too. He went off. You know, until he got tired. But his first 2 or 3 minutes playing, he was tough as nails. The problem was he would get tired and then he'd get foul in trouble. He couldn't. You know, it was hard for him to play defense. He just sweated so much from the night before.
Yeah.
But everything was going good. And then the next round, he was gone.
Sacked.
Well, we don't know because the coach came and told us. He said, "Look, Jeffrey has gone back to the U.S.
After one game.
And he said that's at his request. He said, well, it was kind of mutual, but he was happy to go, happy to stay, happy to leave.
Yep.
So we later found out that they didn't find a major sponsor, and I think that cost-wise, him keeping him out here too
was a bit cost-worthy. Yeah.
He was very high maintenance. You know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But huge, big heart.
Yeah.
Big heart, big smile.
Yep.
Loved to play and all that, but. The crowd was hard on him too.
Yeah.
I remember our first home game. There was a write-up in the paper, and the paper, I think it was Stuart Roach, and said, "Oh, Jeffrey Cummings is making his entrance."
Oh, actually, yeah.
It was after the game. He had played really, really well, but the headline was like the big
Fat Albert or something.
Extremely obese center
Yep.
who looks more like a cartoon character, Fat Albert.
Yeah. Yes,
I thought,
remember.
Whoa,
that.
Yeah. Even though he had 20 points and 12 rebounds, 3 assists, you know, and it was tough on him. You know, I think that sort of really got under his skin. You know, because it wasn't the fact that we won; it was the fact that what his appearance was. He wasn't in shape.
That Fat Albert.
Yeah. And then what happened? I remember at the game, the next home game, we lost to Albury. And I remember some kids saying, "Hey, it's Fat Albert!"
Really?
Yeah. And he looked up and he says, "Suck my dick."
We might have to beep that out, but anyway.
Yeah. And I said, "Jeff, you can't say that, man. They don't know. It's you can't have rabbit ears. You just got to focus on the game, you know."
Maybe that was why he requested to go home. You never know. You never know.
It was hard. It was a hard atmosphere too, because the people that came to the game, they weren't really fans. They weren't too happy about seeing you play.
Yeah.
And I didn't find out until later. I found out a lot of people that were there watching the games either got passed over for a coaching job or have a relative or family member or friend didn't get picked for the team.
Yeah, right. Or a junior team or something.
Yeah. So it had that element about it. Kind of like the people that show up to watch Anthony Mundine boxing match.
Yeah, to boo him.
Yeah. Well, half the people there cheer him. The other half are quietly saying, yeah. But if you lose, that'd be cool. Please get knocked out.
They want to see him get knocked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a bit hard. I think a lot of it is just kind of like the sporting, mentality. Everyone's critical of you until you put a couple of wins together. Then they're happy.
Now, you think that's just Newcastle, or did you notice that when you first came here to today, or how did that go about?
Yeah, I kind of noticed it when I came to town.
Back in 91?
Back in 91, yeah.
Yeah, right.
I remember walking down, my first day here, just to shake off the jet lag, I went for a walk down Hunter Street.
Yep.
And I'm just walking, this is a Sunday afternoon.
And you got booed.
No, this car just pulled up. And this bogan, just leans out the window, and he goes, "Hey!" He goes, "Fuck you!" As they're driving past. And I'm thinking, man, this is an angry town, you know?
Yeah. That was just, I think, 91. The Knights had been around for 3 years then. 88 they came in.
Yeah.
And I think today that focus has shifted to the Knights now.
Yeah.
So I think that what you're talking about is what they all do at the Knights game and stuff like that. Yeah. But going back to Jeff Cummings, I've actually got a game. It might be 1990, 89 or 90. It's the Newcastle Falcons versus Little Rock, Arkansas. And he's actually playing. It's just shot, the footage is shot just through a handy cam. I think it's just for the call of the game, or not, sorry, just for the proof of the game, not for the call. But I've got a Finder NTSC playback video recorder, so I can record that one. But I'll post that up on the Falcons page. But what about the guy that replaced him?
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about, it's called frying pan to frying pot.
Yes, yes.
So he left. It was just, we just had one in for it. That was myself for a couple weeks. And then we heard about this guy that Sydney Kings apparently brought out. His name was
Shoalhaven?
Shoalhaven, yeah. They brought him out to Shoalhaven to play, and they I think wanted to see whether he was NBL worthy. And his name was Richard Ramey.
Yes, we've actually spoken about him on the podcast before. I actually spoke to him about him with Ken Cole. Ken Cole didn't actually remember him, but he said that I've got the footage of him shooting around with the Falcons and practicing and stuff like that. But he was actually going to replace Jerry Everett in that 90-91 Falcons team, but never got around to it. And it eventually, who was it? Was it Troy Trevelyan? I think?
Yes.
Yeah, came in, yeah.
Came in, yeah.
But Richard Ramey, he's the guy. He's the guy from 91.
He impacted the game for decades afterwards. I think a lot of it was because his sheer raw talent, but also about how kind of destructive and everything ended up.
Yeah, well, just to break it down a bit for the listeners, Richard Ramey was averaging 30 points a game. He was averaging a quadruple-double. He wasn't averaging a triple-double. He was averaging a quadruple-double. So he was getting like 30 points a game. He was getting 10 or 15 rebounds a game. This is all in the Siebel. And he was getting at least 10 assists, averaging 10 assists, and averaging more than 10 turnovers. So there's your quadruple-double. But yeah, he was. Yeah, well, we can talk about the stories later we actually roomed with him, but we can talk about that later. But he was wild, that guy.
He was amazing. When he first showed up, he was really quiet. He worked his ass off in training, too. Good job, very positive, good job, good hands, all right, nice block. Come on, guys, very positive, too.
And what happened?
And then he played his first game, and he went off. And I think it was against West City. We almost beat him. We went to 3 overtimes down there, and they had a stacked team. They had Tawny Jensen, they had Alphonse Hammond, Steve Voss. So they were loaded with
the Razorbacks.
Razorbacks.
Yeah.
Down there.
Yes,
we
this
had
would have
them
been before
jail.
their NBL team, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We had them in jail, and horrible calls. But it was like, wow, we started to get being taken really seriously, and they took him seriously too. As the season progressed, he got a lot more. I think he just changed as a person. Because everything happened so quick. It was almost like a shooting star. It was fast and bright, but burned out quick.
Yeah. He was flashy, though.
He was flashy, and like
a flashy star.
For 6 weeks, he created like basketball nirvana in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Because the Falcons weren't going too good, and people just wanted to come see this guy. He was a physical specimen.
He nearly pulled off the quadruple of we were talking about this off air. He came to the State League. He came to the Siebel, and he nearly pulled off the whole triplet of making the NBL, all in one, like in the space of about 6 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. He had an NBA body. He had NBA strength, size, speed, skill. He had everything.
He had the look. He even looked like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
That was the deal.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the Michael Jordan stuff later.
But he had the prototype physique. For it. Like, he had no weakness in his game. His only weakness, I think, was probably coachability and in close games too, like court awareness.
He just pull up from half court.
Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it worked in the beginning of stages. You know, he'd come down and he'd get big. He would just come get the ball and just dribble up and pull up from half court, and he was 30-40%. But there's still going to be a lot of offensive rebounds. But just his physique, him getting to the basket too, getting fouled, he'd shoot about 10, 12. Points a game. Because back in those days, the Siebel was not a defensive league. Yeah. It was 12-minute quarters. You couldn't touch people. You
had guys averaging 40.
Averaging 40. They were shooting 20 free throws a night.
Yeah.
They just wanted, Yeah, like you had guys like Eric Cooks too.
Yes.
Who was just lighting it up.
Yep.
Because if you even came near him, there was a foul call, and he had this unstoppable sort of turnaround bank shot too, just a bit like George Gervin.
There was Ron Nunley.
Yeah. But anyway, back to Ramey though. He was just, he was amazing. He was bringing everybody up, and then even the coach went on record like, "Hey man, we got to step up. We got to help him out too." And
all right,
we got a couple of good wins. think it was down there in Melbourne. We beat Northeast Melbourne, and they had like Mike Kelly and Terry Johnson backcourt. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Was
that the team you were telling me about with Pat Reedy as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That was Northeast. I think they were Arrows.
Northeast Arrows. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were tough backcourt.
Yep.
So anyway, what happened was the whole chemistry of the team changed. He changed. He stopped socializing. Like he'd come to training. He wouldn't even acknowledge you. He wouldn't even say hi. He would just walk right past you. He'd get the ball, start shooting. That's when he came to training.
Yeah, right.
And his pregame routine changed too. And if he was, we were supposed to meet like an hour before in the locker room, in the shed. We're in there and all. And
he's not there.
And he's not there. The coach is going over the team talk, and he's mentioned starting lineup and all that, And sure enough, the 3-man, Jason Atkins, Jason was starting all that. And then about 2 minutes later, he walks in the locker room with earphones on.
Yes, like Michael Jordan.
Yeah. He says, I'm here. I'm ready to play.
Yeah.
So Brian then stopped, and he looked at Jason. He said, oh, no, Jason, you're not starting. Ramey's starting. You're coming off the bench. And the whole team just went, oh, man, oh. Yeah, and all this is happening. He's doing push-ups. He's doing 50 push-ups.
Yes, I've seen that.
So obviously there's no game structure. There's no strategy and all that. So it's like, okay, let's go out. Whatever we said before about the team talk, forget it.
Don't worry
Richard's
about it.
here. Let's just go out.
Yeah.
Right, you guys just
he's going to get 40.
He's going to get 40 shots.
So who else was Marty McLean?
Yeah. Todd Hadaway, Dave Willis.
Yes, Dave Willis.
Steve Wheelow. Steve Whelan from Central Coast.
Rowan George. Yeah.
So it was a pretty solid, solid team. The guys had some experience too.
Yeah.
But
there's some ex-NBL guys there too.
Yeah. It was just hard though because things sort of changed because we didn't have all of our roles changed. We didn't really know what to do because we obviously didn't have an offense. So we're just, inbound the ball, get it to Richard. He comes across half court. He lets it fly.
Yeah. Literally, like I said before, you step across the halfway line and
there was no ambiguity what was going to happen. So now teams figured it out. And sure enough, we're playing Sydney City at home.
Yeah.
And they got Steve Carfino and Mark Ridland.
Yes.
Steve Carfino had just had some injury problems with his back.
That was 91 when he done
91,
his back.
yeah. So he was playing for the Comets because he was just keeping himself in shape.
Yes.
Looking to get back into the lineup.
Yeah.
So yeah.
To the Kings, yes.
Yeah. So everyone thought, oh man, this is it. So Ramey's gonna, he's just gonna take over and dominate. And Steve Carfino just came and just put on a show,
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have like 40 points, but he just handled the ball.
Schooled him.
He had about like 19 points, no turnovers hardly.
Yeah.
But late in the game, we're about 2 or 3 buckets. It's a 2-possession game, 2 minutes to go.
Yep.
And Carfino just went, he took
bang,
over.
Bang.
And,
Yeah.
And none of that. He backed off him. He gave him space because he knew he'd pull up.
Yes, exactly. And missed it.
And it was bang. It was a
brick.
Didn't even hit the rim.
Yeah.
And then Carfino came down and just closed it out.
Yep.
And after the game, there was a lot of blame going around. And so we were all taking the blame except for Richard.
Right.
But that was just the whole narrative. It was Richard's team.
Yeah.
He was the player coach, owner, CEO.
Everything. Yep. I remember us rooming with him in Melbourne, yes.
Yeah.
And do you remember the story? You might remember this one. He actually stole my bike pants out of my gear, and because I just got back from the States, right? And I was asked to train with that Siebel team for the listeners in case they don't know. And I actually got called away because you were short that week, and we went away for the it was Keilor Thunder, the quadruple overtime game. Yeah. And that was the game that he actually stole my bike pants, and he stole them out of my bag, and they were the NBA ones. I brought them back from America. And that's why he wanted them. They were the ones, you remember the Dan Marley ones with the NBA logo on the bottom?
They didn't have these internet companies back then. You could not get hold of them.
You could not get a hold of them, no. And he stole them, and he was wearing them. And he gave me these ones that were like down to my ankles or something that I could wear. But lucky I had a backup pair, so I got them. But the night before, we had a 3-game road trip, and it was... I can't remember if it was Gippsland, maybe? Yeah, Gippsland and...
Keilor, and I think
Keilor was the third game, was it?
Yeah. It was the third game. It was Might have been Nuttawani or Dandenong, one of those.
Yeah, it might have been
cities, or
Dandenong.
Kilsyth.
Yeah. Anyway, the night we got there, we wake up and Richard's not there. And then this was after the first game on the Friday night. And then on the Saturday night, he goes out and brings back this Asian girl. And this Asian, I woke up and there's this Asian lady using the telephone at the end of my bed trying to call a cab. And Dave Willis actually came in the room. Do you remember when Dave came in? Dave knocked on.
I was sleeping pretty hard.
Oh, yeah. Well, my point is that he was partying the whole 3 days. The whole 3 days. The first night he didn't even come home. The second one, he brought some Asian chick.
I remember a little bit. I was half asleep.
Yeah.
And I remember him like I remember it was a bit like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
She was like, who's that? Who's that?
Yeah.
And he's like, nobody, babe. Don't worry about it. There's
Yeah.
nobody. There's nobody here, babe. It's just me and you. And she's like, no, who's that? Someone here. Oh, someone in the room. Someone in the room.
It was me and you.
No, this is happening. This must be a dream. 'Cause I didn't bother poking my head up her.
Yeah. Because actually, I remember now, you had that sort of separate little area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And I slept hard, man.
Yeah.
Especially on those road trips too. You
Yeah,
had to get your rest.
But we'll also talk about some of the other stuff he did off the court. We may as well get it out the way while we're talking about it. Tell us about the Saab incident, riding off the Saab and visiting Rodney O and all them guys. He's the D Train, Dwayne McLean in Sydney.
I don't know as much as the other like local players or people that had mixed with them, but I did hear some stuff that was later substantiated especially in Inside Sports, that article by Ian Cockrell.
Yes.
Everyone's got to read that.
I'll actually post that on the Falcons page.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'll post a copy of that. I've actually got the magazine, the Inside Sport magazine. We won't ruin it too much for you, but he ends up going to jail. And it's about him in jail and how he finds Islam and all that type of stuff.
Well, the stuff that happened,
redemption.
Most didn't even have any idea. I just heard tidbits here and there, like he'd written off the coach's car, and he fled the scene.
Yes,
that's all I sort of heard.
Yep.
Because a lot of that was still like that. That was before the internet.
Yes.
And nothing was in the papers. There was just word of mouth, and so you didn't ask.
You didn't know. Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I'm not surprised until you saw something written on paper.
Yep.
And it wasn't until this article came out that I had no idea. We were wondering why he wasn't at training.
Yeah. Like,
especially after about 6-7 weeks in, that was it.
Yeah.
He was there. He didn't come to training anymore. He just showed up at games. And I didn't know where, like, I assumed since he had the coach's car, he'd be at training I thought he was living with the coach, but apparently he was in Sydney.
That was the Saab.
Yeah. And he had the side gig in Sydney, and I thought, oh, okay, that explains why he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as the season went on, it was hard because the teams adjusted to him, and his performance went down because he obviously was burning the candle at both ends.
Definitely.
And the whole town was just...
This guy was shooting around after Falcons games. The Falcons game, like, I can't remember who it was, but just say it was Brisbane Bullets, Falcons at Newcastle. The game is over. Here's Richard out on the main court shooting around at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was. The town loved him though.
They couldn't wait to just jump on the wagon. I remember the shirts too. The
shirts.
Rumors Clothing.
Yes, I've got one.
He came on board. He said, hey, man, I'm going to sponsor you guys. I'm going to raise some money for you. So he had this line of T-shirts.
Yeah.
And it had Richard Raymond, him slam dunking the ball.
The cartoon figure.
Yeah.
Hunter's logo on the bottom.
And Rumors was selling it. So obviously he gave Richard a job on commission. The more shirts he said, he get to pocket it.
Yep.
Because, after about halfway through the season, he stopped talking to the teammates. He didn't have to say anything to him.
Yeah.
And there was one time, it was about 3 games left in the season. And he said to me, he goes, hey, Tom, give me $10. And I said, oh, what? I thought you're doing all right.
You're selling those shirts.
No, then he pulled it out.
Oh, then he pulled the shirt out. Yeah.
Yeah, because when he first said, I said, man, you need to have someone renegotiate your contract. You're asking me for $10. And he pulled the shirt out.
You know what? He got me for 10 too.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, far out.
Yeah, he got me for 10.
I got, like with the Amway,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Done.
Buyer's remorse, Yeah. Now I wish to God I had that shirt.
Yeah. I've still got mine, man. I've still got mine.
Yeah, some people had the shirt, and they went and they textured bars on it.
Yes, I seen that.
Too.
Patrick Walters.
Yeah,
he had one with bars on it.
That became like a black market sort of gem.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't have mine. Regrettably, I don't have mine. But he went. The thing is that in a matter of weeks, he went from being the most popular, well-known athlete in the town outside of rugby league.
Yeah.
8 weeks later, he was wanted in 2 states.
Yes, exactly. And he was
felony charges.
Another little thing we skipped over there was when he was in going back to the Michael Jordan stuff. Yeah. This guy walked, talked, acted like Michael Jordan in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he did it so to the T. He was, rumor has it, he was charging rooms up to the Chicago Bulls in Sydney.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, he was charging it to the Bulls, saying he was Michael Jordan.
Business cards made out.
Michael Jordan?
No, Ramey did. He had business cards made out.
No, with Michael Jordan. Yeah.
And he was running up hotel tabs.
Yes.
Car rental tabs. Anything on it. Restaurant tabs.
Booking it to the Chicago Bulls.
I had a friend who worked at Leroy's.
Yes, the nightclub.
Yeah, he would come in there, and he would get in there for lunch or for dinner or so, and order something from the bistro, and they said, "Oh, it's on the house."
Yeah.
And he tried a couple times, and they said, "No, it's not."
No, it's not on the house. Yeah. What about the little bag that got caught at Leroy's? Speaking of Leroy's, he had this little purse, and it was a bit bigger than a purse. It's about a foot by a foot purse, and listeners out there can guess what was in it, but it was full of drugs and stuff and pills and whatever. And apparently, didn't he lose that at Leroy's? I
haven't heard much of that rumor.
Phil Lee found it or something? Is that right?
That may have been. All I know is that when this other stuff came out in the article, in the magazine article, it's like put 2 and 2 together. Like, oh, no wonder he had so much energy.
Yeah.
Because the guy did not sleep.
Yes, he didn't sleep.
And I'm thinking back now, how did he not have a heart attack?
Yeah.
Because that wasn't a few years long after Len Bias and a couple of NFL players done the same thing.
He was out there balling though. He was running, balling.
Yeah. He wasn't sweating either too.
No.
He was getting up. We were driving down. He was drinking like Frangelico.
Yeah.
In the morning of the day of a game.
Yeah.
And he'd still go out and get 40, 45 points.
Yeah. But I'll post the Inside Sport magazine thing on there. Yeah. And
that was hard. The thing is that was before the internet.
Yes.
And that was before 9/11 too.
Well, Inside Sport was the only, not only Inside Sport, but other magazines and things like that. Yeah. That's where you got your information from, not the internet.
No,
Yeah.
And before 9/11, the visas and the passports and all that. It was. And also getting players to come out. It was a whole different story. It's mostly word of mouth.
Yeah.
Like the guy who sent me out was the same guy that sent out Eddie Whitmore.
Yes.
And Eben Knox too.
Eben Knox. Shout out to
both
Eben.
of who gave me huge valuable advice to this day. And they said,
and what was that? Yeah.
Do not give them your passport. Do not surrender your visa.
Because they hold it over you.
They will hold it over you like a hatchet blade.
These are the stories you don't hear about the imports, guys, the listeners out there.
Otherwise, you'll become like indentured servant, So that was good advice, especially when I started working at How's That too. So
Yeah. All right, so in 1994, John Hoyle was the coach, the Siebel Hunters coach.
Yeah.
Talking about the association stuff, what do you got to say about that?
He was highly regarded. He had his own office in there. He was like a development coach too.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of good success, and a bit like Ken Clifford too. The reason why, because he didn't have a dog in the race. He wasn't. He wasn't coaching his son.
No children yet.
No, yeah, exactly. He just loved teaching the game. He loved the game. And when after the couple of those real bad seasons, they gave him the job of the Hunters. That's when Sean Sykes came to town.
Yes, he was the other import.
Yeah. And they had Marco. They had Sean Sykes and Marco as their imports.
That was the beginning of the year. Yeah.
Yes. Until
Marco Fleming.
Yeah. Marco Fleming. Then he left. But Sean Sykes, another one, came from nowhere and just blitzed it. I think he was living in the Central Coast.
Yes.
Tough as nails, finisher. A bit like Tim Hardy, really quick crossover too.
Yeah.
Could create his own shot.
Yeah.
And also get two-way player too.
Yeah.
Could stop the other team's point guard. And then you had Darren Winterbine, too, come up.
Yeah.
When they gave the job to Hoyley, a lot of the older guys had retired and, sort of tapered off, weren't playing as much. And out of nowhere, out of whole cloth, he brought in all these young guys. And he developed them, and he made like a really strong core out of them.
Now, that was a year, I think, Winterbine was with the Falcons.
Yes,
he was training with the Falcons squad.
Yeah.
And I remember Sean Sykes actually halfway through the season, because we were friends and just talking like we do sometimes.
Yep.
He was saying about, because Derek Rucker was the import, Derek Rucker and Terry Dozier for the Falcons.
Yes.
He was going that good, he could probably take Derek Rucker's spot.
Yeah, he was like an instant bucket.
Yeah.
And he had a motor too.
Yeah.
And he had like a lot of imports. He was the first year out there. And he was kind of like an unknown. So, so he really sort of, he really turned it around. And he was a good guy too. Very low key. I think he had a young kid.
Yep.
Lived in Central Coast, so he'd commute. He'd take the train back to the Central Coast.
Yeah.
So you never saw him out on the town or anything. He took care of himself.
Yeah.
And then 94, he got the job. Hoyley, they rehired Hoyley.
Yep.
And more guys started coming up, like Ben Melmoth.
Yes. Yep.
And Matty Jones.
Yep.
Peter Barnett. Michael Gallagher too.
Yes.
These guys, and they were showing up, and he had sort of developed because he was also doing a lot of coaching with the state teams and the development programs. So he was working on them like on a weekly basis, and he would challenge the hell out of them. He wasn't giving anyone any back rubs.
Yeah,
he wasn't massaging anyone's egos. He was going to dissect you, see what you're about.
Yeah,
and he was really, really tough. Oh yeah, did I mention Winterbine too? Yeah,
yeah, at first, yeah.
Who I don't think he didn't even make the team the year before. He was like playing
the Hunters.
Yeah,
but he's good enough to be on the Falcons training squad.
Yeah, well, the next year I think because he's just blown up and. And Hoyley, I think, gave him that confidence. The thing was what John Hoyle did is that he gave these local players confidence that, like, I don't care who you're from Melbourne, Sydney or so, we're going to go down there, we're going to play smash mouth, we're going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And he came out, like, winning some games. I think they won the first game of the season in 93. But in 94 it was the same, And our training sessions were really, really tough because John Hoyle was like a nerd trapped. Well, he was like a thug trapped in a nerd's body.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
He looked, with the round glasses too. He kind of looked disarmed. You get him out there on the court.
Hoyley
he will bump you.
Yeah.
He will shiv you.
Yeah. He had a good 3-point shot on him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did.
And he, obviously he put on a bit of weight and all that. But we had a lot of these half court sessions.
Yeah.
And he was just roughing people up, bumping them, telling them like, oh, you got stripped. You got to work on your left more. You got to do this, got to do that. And he even got the oldest Melmoth to come along, Simon Melmoth.
Oh, okay, for practice.
Yeah. And he was going through the fireys and all that. So this he's dragging like fire hoses up 5-story buildings.
Yeah.
So he gets out there and he's just hammering people too.
On a Tuesday and Thursday night.
Yeah. So our training sessions were like brutal. We got guys with black eyes and sore and all that. And if anyone would get mad, he would say, "Oh, come on, toughen up, get into it." It's like, shit, yeah, okay, well, I better not complain, because he's out here too.
Yeah.
So that was really, really, really good year. And it was kind of funny because this guy, Peter Davies, owner of Anchor Seafood.
Yes.
Just down Broadmeadow, I think.
That was the major sponsor, yeah.
Yes. It's where the Subway is now. He showed up out of the blue. He said, "Hey, man, I want to sponsor you guys."
Yep.
They didn't have a major sponsor, and I think it might have been 30, 40 grand in those days.
Yeah. 30, 40 grand back then.
Yeah,
like
30 years
grand.
ago, like mid-90s or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like once Ben came back from Utah, I think it was in June or so.
Yeah, it was halfway through the season. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we had a really tough big team. Winterbines, Rowan George too.
That Sykes Melmoth connection. That was what you had that year.
Yeah. And also too, I think Sykes had a bit of ankle problems his the second year. But I think the other one sort of picked up. I mean, he was still really, really good. I think the other teams were ready for him. Yeah. They prepared for him too, and they tried to get him, instead of reversing the ball, they wanted to get him to stay in one side and then force a shot up. Yeah. So
he had that backdoor lob thing. He'd get at least one or two of them a game, every game.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was watching. I think he played 94 and 95.
Yes.
Both years I watched.
96.
I thought every game he gets one of them. And I thought to myself, if I'm ever playing against him, I'm not going to let him get one of them on me. played him in 1999. He got one first play of the game. Yeah. Oh, no, it wasn't first, probably second. But, he got one. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
He had sneaky hops.
Yes.
Really quick first step, too.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. He got me
really
on the back
quick
door.
First step. Yeah. And once he got that quick first step, he was either going to get the shot off, get a bit of spacing and distance, and draw the foul, too. And it was really good. But he was, Poyley pushed him in training, too, though. And so that was like, it was sort of fun to see.
But what about the Australian guys? What are your best Australian local guys from here, from Newcastle, from those years?
Probably the ones that he found.
Like Winterbine?
Yeah, definitely Winterbine. And not only Winterbine was a great, tough player, he was a really good guy, too.
Yeah.
He was a good teammate. He was humble. He was fun to be around.
Yep.
Didn't have that ego and all that, And the same was the other guys, too, like Ben, Rowan, Matty Jones, Gal. These guys just showed up, and they just worked hard. They didn't take anything for granted.
Those guys you mentioned, like two of them went on to play NBL.
Yeah.
Matty Jones, I don't know if you know, he was with Brisbane Bullets about 3 or 4 years ago. He was their manager.
Yeah.
20.
Probably Matty Jones should have played. If he had gone in the NFL, he would have been all defensive.
Yeah.
All defensive tackle.
Yeah, right.
Or defensive end.
Okay.
He would actually win. We'd have at the end of training, we'd have run sprints.
And he'd still win.
He'd come first.
Yeah.
And he's like, 130 kilos and 6'6".
Yeah.
It's like, man, you're playing the wrong sport.
Power forward.
Yeah, but there was a really tough group of players, and it's a shame that they couldn't hold on to them. And that was part of the narrative of the Newcastle is that they were always trying to rebuild every year. They would blow it up. They blew up this team.
And put new ones in each year.
Yeah. All these players left.
Yep.
I think maybe Rowan stayed around. Well, Ben went back to Utah, and then Darren Winterbine he got a really nice in Western Australia. He was offered.
Oh yes,
there. Geraldton, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Money talks.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just like and it was sad to see because someone like Hoyley, you got to give him a 5-year commitment. And that's the problem. Someone comes along, and that it's like that play of the club. There's a really good line in there. It says, "If you lose, they hate you. If you win, they hate you more."
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of realized that this is what.
That's the town.
That's the town.
Yeah.
And what really emphasized it more was when Adrian Hurley and Tim Mallon came to town. They took over the ABA program.
That was just after the Falcons finished.
Yes.
So that was 98, 99.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. That was the last Falcons season.
Yeah, I was at I'd gone to Lake Macquarie to play down there for a couple of years, and they'd come back. He'd taken over the ABA Youth League State League program.
Yes.
All three programs all run
just as one club.
Just as one club. Yep. Coaches, same offenses, training together and all that. It was like
we were running the same offense that he ran, Adrian Hurley, when he was with the Perth Wildcats.
Yeah.
And with the Boomers when he coached them back in the day.
And the Youth League and Men's State League ran the same thing. And it worked so good because we were like a reserve club. We had a couple of players that would move up and play with them, like Ryan Morgan.
Yeah.
He'd get the call up and all that to play, or Rupi or Sparky too.
Yes, yeah.
All these guys got a chance to play ABA, and also youth league players too.
Yep.
Like Johnny Howe.
Yes.
Who was really raw coming up.
And still there now.
Yeah, and just it was a really good system that you had consistency. And they ended up winning too, and that's when I first realized, like, wow, not too many people are happy about this.
Yeah, well, on the last episode of the former Falcons podcast, we had Sean Dennis, and it was all coming back to me when he was telling me that there was a meeting at Noah's on the Beach, and he was basically locked out of the meeting. Adrian Hurley was given the title of the new Falcons coach if they were going to be back in the league, and hindsight proves that they didn't come back in the league. But Hurley was supposed to be coaching the Falcons. So he was going to be the new coach of the Falcons if they were back in the league, but they never did.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, they had really good opportunity. I think by year 3, it was kind of realized we weren't getting a lot of love from the board and the association.
Who's that? The state league?
Well, all of them,
all three,
the management, because it was like, all right, you guys got to. This is your bill. You got to pay this. All right, if you get a sponsorship, you get this money off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd go out. All right, okay, cool. We got a sponsor. We got a major sponsor. It's like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, here's another bill on top of that.
Yeah. Pay this one.
Yeah. What's this bill for? Like, it's in the budget. All right. Well, where's the budget at? Like, I don't know. We left it in your pigeonhole.
Yeah. The old pigeon must have blew away.
Yeah. It was weird because, again, like Adrian didn't have a dog in the race. He was just there to, put on this uniform, huge program, which he really, really did. He developed some really good players. They had a tough group there, probably the best in the state. He had like Matt Cook, Mitch Selwood, Matty McGovern, and Dan Proctor too. Those four.
Was Larry Davidson playing then, or was that after?
Brad. You mean Brad or Larry?
Not the bearded Larry Davidson. The Hunter Pirates.
No, that was before.
That was after.
No, that was before.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He had those four. He brought him along when he took over the Pirates.
Yeah. Okay.
But this was the Hunters.
Yep.
And they ended up taking like first place for like 2-3 years in a row.
Yeah.
They made the playoffs. There was one time they lost in semis, but they had really good players. But you had like Matt Cook, and you had Dan Proctor,
Pete Barnett.
But you had McGovern too.
Yes.
Those three were the three. All three of them were getting 20 points a game each. And Proctor would get about 9 or 10 rebounds.
Well, those three guys were actually on the Hunter Pirates roster. They were actually on the 12.
Yep.
Or 13 or 14 or whatever they had. And Cookie and McGovern actually did get a few minutes there. And sorry, who was the other guy you mentioned as well?
Dan Proctor?
No.
Mitch Selwood?
Mitch Selwood. Well, he was actually on the full-time roster. Yeah.
So they had a really, really good team. I think the problem was when Hurley and Mallon left, those players didn't hang around either, too. So it was back to rebuilding. So
so those guys were some of the Aussie content that you liked.
Yeah, they were tough. Also, too, the toughest local players for some reason came from Grafton.
Right.
Grafton was the size of Cessnock.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere on the mid-north coast.
Something in the water up there.
Our first preseason game, when I first came out here, it was about a month into the season. It was about in March or so. The coach says, right, we got a preseason weekend tomorrow, so everyone be on the bus at 6 a.m.
Yep.
So we meet at the stadium, get on the bus at 6 a.m., 23-seater, 12
that's
hours.
Right. They didn't have the freeway.
That was didn't have the freeway. They had all these switchbacks.
Yes, that's right.
South of Taree.
Yeah.
And this minibus, like wooden seats, not much padding either, too. And those those sliding windows, too.
Yeah.
Not much air conditioning. So we got on that, and it was like, boom. I remember like 8 hours later, we ended up in Coffs Harbour. It took us that long to get there.
That's about halfway.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, man. So we arrive at 6 p.m. at night in Grafton.
Yeah.
They're putting us up at the Crown Hotel on the river.
All right.
Yeah. So we show up, and we've got about 12, 13 on our team, 14,
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't quite have enough rooms for us, so they put 2 beds out on the veranda.
Yeah.
In the lobby in there.
Grafton style.
As we're checking in, the lobby in there, they got the TV going on. And the old guy, probably in his 50s, 60s.
Smoking a pipe or something?
No shirt on. He's drinking a long neck.
Yeah, all right.
And what are you doing here? And I said, we're here to play. We're here to play to Grafton. He says, you're going to get skunked. You're wasting your time. You're not going to beat this team. It's like, that's funny.
Yeah.
And we go out there and we lose. The refs weren't, that great, but we're dead tired. Our legs are just like, we've been 12 hours.
Driving the bus.
Yeah. And at halftime, Coach Brian says, what's wrong with you guys? You guys look listless, Yeah, it's like, we're just sitting there. We ended up winning the next game on the next day, on Sunday,
All right, yeah.
Yeah, but it was tough. People showed up from nowhere.
Yeah.
And they had Terry Johnson, Dean Chudley.
Yep.
The import, Jeff Hart.
Gav Vickers.
Gav Vickers. Gav Lane Beer Vickers, yeah.
Yeah.
They were tough as nails.
Yeah.
And they ended up beating most Melbourne teams that go up there, too, because they'd have to travel all day.
Yeah, that's further away.
Yeah, they leave Melbourne, it's 11 degrees. They show up there, it's 28 degrees. They got their mind, feral crowd in their face.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had a really good home court advantage, but I was just impressed by how much talent came from Grafton.
Must
and
be
the
something
coach
up
too.
Yeah.
Bruce Leonard was a legend. This is before the days when now if a coach asks 3 questions in a row, he gets a tech foul and he gets referred to psychiatric counseling,
automatic suspension,
put on the no-fly list, and all because you asked the ref 3 questions in a row. Those days it was like WWE.
Call the foul.
Call foul, effing this.
Yeah.
Walk out on the court, throw a chair out.
Yeah.
And I think Bruce had sort of said a couple things. He was passionate. The guy knew his basketball. And he said a couple things. And I said, "That's it, coach. You're out of here. You were out. You were out of this stadium."
Yeah.
And everyone in the stands like, "Yeah, right, sure, yeah." So, sure enough, we're going along. We're playing. 10 minutes later, there he is. He's standing in the doorway. He's got a lit cigarette.
Yeah.
And he's calling out. He's still coaching the game in the doorway. And the refs are pretending like, I don't see him. No, let's play on. Yeah.
Back in the day, you could do that. These days, no. You got to leave the stadium, and they'll eject you big time.
They cannot take the. I know they have to have order, and they're worried about liabilities and refs being attacked and all that, or players going off. But you have to allow passion in the game.
Yeah.
And I remember the coaches, of ours would get like 5 or 6, 7, 8 texts during the season, but they were well earned.
Yeah.
And they were
as long as they weren't sort of like 3 or 4.
No, it was never threatening and all that. It was like you were arguing the call. There was no personal attacks. There was no violent language involved.
Yeah.
So that was why it's a lot tougher those days. Even like the judiciary.
Yeah.
And I remember playing club competition, how tough and emotional it was, and everyone played for pride.
In Newcastle.
Yeah, you have bragging rights. This is a big part of the Newcastle basketball, which they really done right. Because it was the clubs that ran it. Long before there was Newcastle Rep, you had Port Hunter.
Like on the Wednesday night.
Yeah. You had Port. Well, and also through the week, training, traveling, and all that.
Yeah.
Like you had, Port Hunter, City Club, Lakers, PCYC,
College,
Uni.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had these clubs that they actually were the ones that had all the really good quality coaches in them. They're the ones that went out and got the grassroots kids involved in basketball and taught them.
Yeah.
You had really good players like Eric Harvey with Wes, and you had like Phil Lee and Agnes with City Club.
Oh yeah.
Larry was with West too.
Yep.
Yeah, and he had all his old guys playing. Right? Yeah. You had and you had and Gary Craig too for Port Hunter too.
Yep.
You had guys that spent their life their decades.
Yeah.
Like they put their heart and soul.
They've been around for
club.
A long time.
Yeah,
yep.
And they seen players. They were able to spot talent. They were able to identify potential and really pressed them into it. All these good players, like guys like even Darren Witterbine or Scott McGregor. They started from the club.
Yes, they
situation.
Did. I
That's
played
how
against
they got pushed
Scott
into
McGregor
it.
and Winterbine. Actually, Winterbine he was a year below me.
Yeah.
He was under 14s when I was under 16s, and this was like 1988, 87 or something. And there was one year there where he was under 16s and so was I, and because you don't go the 2 years, and he was gun back then. He was, he was banging bodies. He was doing what he was doing.
But they were getting good midweek experience.
Yeah.
Like what the Sydney clubs get. They have the Sydney competition.
Yeah.
Now it's not the same. They made a huge mistake. The association took over the running of the clubs.
Yeah, what was that about? That was only a year or two ago. What happened there? There was
huge disagreement.
Yeah, there's a big blow up in the paper and everything.
I don't. Well, all I know is from ground up, like they just wiped out the grassroots development of Newcastle.
Yeah.
Because what they had done, all these clubs were running successfully long before there was a Hunters or association. They were their own entity.
Yeah, they've been around since I've been playing.
They had their own treasurers. They provided their own uniforms. We had really I was at Port Hunter. I was a president there for a few years. We had presentations at the Cooks Hill Surf Club.
Yeah, yep.
Pizzas, plaques, perpetual awards.
Yep.
Parents playing. These people had given their lives. You had generations growing up playing for that club. It meant something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were in charge of their own funding. They would pay the associations their costs that would charge them. Then we would provide our own singlets, our own shirts. We provide our own training and all that. Well, I think 2019 and 2020, I said, no, we're going to take over.
We'll take care of that.
Over. Yeah, we'll take over. So, and the problem with that is that what you're doing is that you go up to a lot of these people, like I mentioned before, who spent decades of sweat and toil and time.
Yep.
And telling them like, well, I'm going to take over your shop now. I'm going to
it's mine now.
But you're happy to show up and coach and put all the time and pressure in, but it's going to go to help us.
Yeah.
So
doesn't work like that.
Doesn't work like that. No. That's why they call it a grassroots volunteer club. Yeah.
The impression I got is they were basically Newcastle Basketball were basically cutting out the clubs, cutting out the middleman, the clubs, and collecting the money themselves. Yeah. That's basically what
Well, what's happening is that there's no connection anymore. A lot of these coaches have left.
But by the way, it didn't go that way. They put it back to the clubs, by the way.
Well, there's the quality of the competition and the lack of coaches is really, you can see it.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, instead of having like ownership to a club, now it's like showing up at this venue, paying your fees, playing your game, and then go home.
Yep.
So it's like 10-pin bowling.
Yeah.
Whereas the old days,
for an hour a night.
Before that, you had like when I coached a couple of teams, we trained once or twice a week. We had offenses. We developed the players. We worked on their weaknesses.
Yeah.
Now you have like relatives, or you have like a parent.
Yeah.
That just sort of like, okay, sums them on. They don't really have much like in the way of like new training programs for these coaches. And the other problem is that you've got people who have donated a lot of their time and effort. They're now not going to give you the extra.
Yeah, they're just going to say effort.
Yeah,
leave.
And I tell you what, it always you can cut corners. You can maybe implement overall arrangements and all that. But the problem is your product. When your product sucks.
Yep.
When it suffers. When people know when they're getting
when they're getting screwed.
Yeah. Well, not so much, but they're not getting as much attention putting into it.
Oh yeah.
And what happens too, they're not coached as much. All right, perfect example. A few months ago, I was passing by. I went in there, and it was an under-16s game. I think Division II under-16s. There was 2 minutes left in the game. The score was 11-4.
11-4.
11-4.
Under 16.
Under 16s.
Jesus.
And there was looked like a couple of parents were coached. They were just sort of just put him in, rotating them in.
Yeah.
The kids were standing around. It was kind of like when they play at lunchtime. Yeah, at lunchtime at a school, and the school doesn't have a basketball coach.
Yeah.
So the teacher just throws the basketball out, and you got 4 or 5 kids standing around laughing. One guy who can play knows what to do. He's taking all the shots.
Yeah.
No offense, no spacing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. And that's what happens is that you're not going to have as many people have that sort of persuasion. Or have that, have someone to have eyes on them.
Yeah.
Their development.
Any drive, anything.
Well, not only that, to have the right encouragement too. Because you've got, a couple of hundred each age group each year. You got like a couple of hundred players show up for trials.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for 1 or 2 of them to get lost in the mire. You can't just have trials for 2 days or 2 weeks and say, okay, you're the best 40 kids.
Yeah.
The other 80 of you guys can go home.
Yeah. See you later.
Having that club, this is where you keep people, engaged. Like, hey, keep at it, keep playing and all that,
Yeah.
And they don't have that. And so now because of that, there's a lot of really good talent. There's a lot of raw talent that's slipping away right under their nose. They're ended up at Maitland or the Central Coast.
Yeah, that's where
they're going overseas.
You ended up at Maitland. Everyone's gone to Maitland.
Man, that was the best move I ever did,
Yeah.
And I was like, I coached the Port Hunter Pirates. There was a team.
Yep.
And he was on the team with the guys that didn't make under 16s.
Oh yeah.
Division I,
Yeah.
It was him and Trace and Riley and a couple of guys, and they ended up winning the whole competition. And it sort of kept them involved too, from them not playing. And like those, and they went off, even though they got overlooked. They went on. They're playing college basketball.
Now.
George Washington and Seattle Pacific.
So Newcastle overlooked them, and now where are they now? Playing in the States.
Yeah, they're playing college basketball. I've got this kid on our Maitland team. He's from Jesmond. He's Quatnoy's cousin.
Right. Quatnoy in the NBL.
Yep. His name is Majak Bach. He's 17 years old.
Right.
About 6'8". First year playing rep basketball.
Okay.
He made the Wartaw Youth Newcomer Player of the Year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, this guy was like, he's really, really raw. He's been playing club in Newcastle. I said, has anyone spoken to you and all that? And he goes, no, I know. Like, nothing. Like,
Nothing.
The only reason he came up is because we just invited him to come up, and, we saw what he can do. And sort of kept working, looked after him. And just like that, like within a couple of years, that's where you find your players at.
Yeah. So Newcastle don't sort of do that.
Well, I think it's different. Like if there's a really good player under 12s or under 14s, this guy could be 6'4".
Yeah.
Like an early bloomer, and just bigger than all the kids.
Yeah.
And he scores all these buckets and all that. And so they say, wow, look at this guy. This kid is good.
Yeah.
And they sort of overlook the other kids who have the skill, resilience, but maybe don't have the bodies yet, haven't grown into it.
Mm.
So the problem is, and that going back to John Hoyle, which is why you can't replace people like that,
Yeah.
Is that when you have someone like that, you don't have someone that can, find talent, find diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
All these other associations and clubs do.
Yeah. They don't have the John Hoyles. They don't have people like that.
Well, they do, like in Maitland. When I went up there, I've been up there about 6 years now. And the first time I was coaching up there was under 18s, too. And they had, we're having a coaches meeting. And it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So I show up. So I just expected just a few coaches in there, Every single coach was in there. It
was serious.
16 coaches were in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Notepads, pen. Everyone was like, whoa, shit.
Yeah. Okay.
And not only that, too, in the 6 years that I've been up there, I can count about 5 or 6 times they've brought in these top-tiered coaches like Patrick Hunt from the COE and Sean Roger from Illawarra.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. They would come up and they would do and Lonergan too.
Okay, yep.
They would come up like for the weekend. We'd have like Saturday, Sunday.
And do
coaching.
Camps.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they would show us how to do training sessions, what to look for in players, how to spot talent, how to spot, physical ability.
Newcastle don't do that?
Well, no, they don't. I thought that the understanding is if they were to take over the running of the clubs financially, that I thought that they would, since they're becoming more solvent, that they would maybe put something back in, coaches development.
Yeah. Or
putting on sessions. Hills Hornets all the time.
Yeah.
Like 2-3 times a month.
Development.
They have coaches. I remember going down there for $20. They had a coach from the NBA from the Atlanta Hawks. He was the skills and shooting coach. Go down there and do like a
talk
an hour and a half clinic
at
Hills.
Yeah.
With all these shooting clinics and these drills for the kids to do and all that.
Yeah.
And all these coaches, they're Bankstown, Norris, Manly, all of them guys.
Well, I remember I think it was mid-90s, maybe, I can't remember actually what year it was, maybe early 90s. Sean Bradley came.
Yeah.
He came to Newcastle. He was, but I think that was nothing to do with Newcastle basketball. The only reason why he was here, because he was on a Mormon mission.
Yeah, he would have stuck out.
I've even, 7'7". But I even heard maybe last year or the year before, Matty Johns on the grill team on Triple M. He was talking about Sean Bradley coming to Newcastle. So it did happen.
Yeah. It's sad the way it is. What happened to him, though?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nowadays.
Well, no, he was riding the mountain bike.
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, and this car came up behind him, just plowed into him.
Yeah. Okay.
Knocked him into a parked car, so he had suffered severe head injuries, and now he's
disabled.
Yeah. It's just sad.
Sad
situation. Like in Utah.
Yeah.
Not in L.A. or Vegas.
Yeah, right.
Utah at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah. Like, Sean Bradley, you couldn't miss him.
No, exactly.
Yeah, you couldn't miss him. All right, so who else was the best players that you came across in the Siebel in the early 90s?
Probably be Eric Cooks.
Yep.
He was tough. I mean, you see his son now playing for the Sydney Kings.
Yes, Xavier.
And his son is probably a lot more physical, more athletic.
He is. Eric Cooks had some game though. Eric Cooks was tall and
he was very sneaky.
Yeah.
And he when you first saw him warming up, you thought, oh man, yeah, I'm going to get this guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He would low post you up and turn around. You thought, I'm going to block this shot, and he'd just get it right over you. He was like George Gervin. He was silky smooth. he had this really nice soft turnaround shot too.
Yep.
Refs loved him too. He even bumped him. He shot about 10, 15 free throws a game too.
But have a look at the stats at the end of the game. He's got 30.
He's got like 32 points, 16 rebounds.
Yeah, yep.
And he just ran all day, but he just killed you quietly too. But he had he's like an old school player, like a George Gervin, like Bernard King.
Yes.
Really quick baseline turnaround.
Yeah.
Nothing fancy, but at the end of the game, he's got 45 points. Nobody can stop him. Yeah, and Brad Rosen too.
Yeah.
From Sydney, he did a lot of good stuff. He didn't get a whole lot of credit. I think maybe, I don't know, because of his size, but he was a real icon in Sydney when he was playing with Mark Ridlin and Rostenkopf, and that's when he was
on that championship team we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
That championship team that we beat at home.
Yep. Yeah.
We beat. This is one of my grievances about the season and just things in general. They won the championship the year before. We beat them at home by 8 points or so. On Monday in the paper was one sentence. It said the Newcastle Anchors Seafood Hunters beat the Sydney Comets 84-76.
This is the Herald, Newcastle Herald.
This is the Herald.
Yeah.
After being down 43-42 at halftime.
Yeah.
That was it. And there was probably one paragraph about the Falcons.
Yeah, okay.
And I just thought,
this is defending champs.
Defending champs.
Yeah, and they won it.
And the week before we'd beaten the AIS.
Yeah.
We'd beaten really good. They had like Scott McGregor and they had Glenn Seville.
Yeah.
And they were a tough team, but it was like, I don't know what it was. Maybe they just didn't have enough. I know it was before the internet and all that, but you think, especially if a entrepreneur invests $30,000, $40,000 or so to sponsor you for Anchor Seafood, no photographs, no write-up.
No
one can write
write-up.
2 or 3 paragraphs. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what. Well, as a sponsor, you'd want that, but
nothing. Yeah, nothing. Yeah. And I thought that was quite odd. I think there was only one time there was our game had a photo of Sean Sykes. It was after we beat the AIS.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is COE now, but yeah.
All right.
But yeah, it was a lot of quiet achievements that happened.
What other players did you like? Was there anyone else?
Like Brad Rosen. Oh, obviously Terry Johnson.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he's called Basketball Jesus.
Okay. Basketball Jesus. I didn't know him as that. But
yeah. That's kind of like the mythical name he has because he just does everything good.
All right. Yep.
And I remember first when he played for Grafton, we went up there. This was our first preseason game when I was playing with the Hunters. We went up there, and these guys, here they are in Grafton. They're just sort of hanging out in this apartment, him and Gavin and a couple of, I think, Chudley. They're all sharing the same house.
Yes, yep.
And they're all cool and friendly with this, all that. But once we got on the court, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And he was really, really good. Even when we were playing like at Port Stevens, he's in his 40s. He's coming up there. No practice, no warm-up, just shows up. He gets like a triple-double.
Yeah.
And he just has, when the ball's in his hands, he just knows where everyone's at. And he makes really good, he's a two-way player, a good ball handler, good scorer, tough as nails. And you look at those, probably the past highlights of him when he played for Illawarra, too.
Yeah.
This is afterwards.
Some of those guys you're mentioning, Brad Rosen, the Kings, Terry Johnson, he even played for the Falcons.
Yeah.
Those guys went on to play some good basketball and for some
good
teams.
Really good, yeah. And they were really humble, too.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
They didn't have, any air about them. They were just really good teammates. And you could see why he's the coach of Hills Hornets, Youth League men.
Yes, yep.
And our team, Maitland, were very lucky. It was a very tough playoff game at home this year, and they beat him by a couple of points at the buzzer. His team, overachievers, tough as nails, physical, never turned the ball over, always boxed out, got on the loose balls, and they sort of took after his personality. You can see he's a really, really good, thorough coach, too.
Yeah, I've seen that with the team. I was announcing some games for Terry down on the Central Coast when he was there, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. He was doing the Youth League team down there, coaching, and I was calling their games and stuff. And, what the team was doing sort of reminded me of what he used to play like, even for the Falcons and stuff.
Yeah.
But, those guys went on to play NBL, and they played for the Falcons, some of those guys. But,
There was a real channel. There was a pathway. You don't see that now.
Yeah, that Siebel pathway.
Not only nationally, everyone knew about, you could see their their development. Okay, you could see them playing youth league and then playing Hunters and then playing Falcons and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have that anymore.
Nah.
Everyone leaves.
Yeah.
They're gone. It's pretty bad because about 10 years ago, the coach of the Boomers, Andre Lamage, he came up. He visited Newcastle. He visited Hunter Sports High.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, rightio.
And we thought, he's, because it was pretty much publicized, and a lot of word got around, and everyone thought he was going to really encourage players and all that. He showed up. He pretty much told them, like, if you guys want to pursue your career, you got to get out of Newcastle. He told them to leave, get out.
Yeah, righto.
And it was like, oh crap.
Oh, righto.
But it's like, all that's just like a bit of wisdom dropping. I think he meant also too, for their development, because the game had become a lot more mobile and globular.
And band your wings type of thing.
Yeah. People can now, go try the luck overseas in New Zealand or play in the college system, which you didn't, quite have in those days.
But back in the Siebel days, it was the Siebel was it was like the southeastern basketball of Australia. It was like a true second division. Like the NBL was the one division,
Yep.
The second division was the Siebel, and you had some really good guys in the Siebel too, like some good scorers and stuff. Some of them guys went on to play NBL as well.
Yeah. Mike Kelly too.
Mike Kelly
and Terry Johnson with the backcourt for Northeast Melbourne.
Yeah,
tough as nail. And Mike started out, I think, in Griffith or so, way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And really, really good guy too. Fit in perfect with that Australian system too.
He's assistant coach of the Perth Wildcats now.
Yeah. No, you can. It's
is he still there?
Yeah,
he was last year.
Yeah. No. He's always going to have a job because he knows a lot. He's a tough competitor. He's a good teacher too, and a good guy. Yeah. But it's just really a lot has changed now. A lot of players are leaving. You look at a lot of the like the players from Newcastle, coaches too.
Yep. Quite noise from Newcastle, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
He's back for the Kings now.
He's back for the Kings, but he's out of Newcastle, you see.
Yeah. His you've got a couple of, besides my son Keegan, you also got Evan Kilminster. He's over there playing at Charlestown Division 1.
Oh yeah. In the States.
Yeah. Yep. And Sam Faraday and Trace Evans. He's over there playing at Seattle Pacific.
Yep.
So you've got this sort of like pipeline of players that are sort of going and playing other places.
So why did they go over there? They didn't make it in Newcastle? Is that why they chose to go there?
There probably wasn't enough motivation to stay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What you were saying before.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like good programs attract good players and good systems too.
True. And
now I'm saying this from experience because I had no idea when I was finished playing. I didn't, after being like a player, coach, manager for the state team, I didn't have a lot to do with it for a couple of years until my son started playing.
Right. Got back into it.
Yeah. So then, but from a different perspective too, as like a parent.
Yeah,
and a junior coach.
And you're seeing things from a different light now.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Yeah, okay.
And, and from where I started out playing, I know I'd made a lot of mistakes and made some bad decisions and all that. Ended up in bad situations too.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that, my son didn't end up in the same positions that I did, like sort of like being a navigator.
Yeah.
Guiding him towards good coaches, good programs and all that.
Instead of being stuck in the state league.
Well, yeah. Well, instead of like, being maybe sort of overlooked, playing club basketball.
Yeah. Yep.
It was really good having him. There were a couple of really, really good options that we had the luxury of having. One was the AUSA. That was it's like an AAU training facility and team for like players that are trying to make college basketball.
Right. Yeah.
They've got a whole separate, different strategy about it. What they do is that they look out for players that have the potential, not the players that are really good at the time, not junior players, but players that have the potential of playing at the college level. And they do specific clinical workshops with them too, like how to shoot, how to catch, how to play defense, a lot of individual skills too. Very similar to what the Europeans do.
Radio, yeah.
Which is why, like the Europeans, those professional clubs, they have their own development program. You know, up here it's different. You've got New South Wales Country. You've got some broad, expansive organization that's in charge of player development, and it's a lot of ground to cover. So it's easy to get lost, lost in the rough.
Yeah.
Whereas in that situation, they can see players who are talented, have the persistence, have the fortitude, the coachability, and they work with them and they polish them up a bit, with the skills, fundamentals, footwork, and all that. And that's getting back to John Hoyle. That was one of his visions he had.
That's what he was doing, that type of stuff.
He was ahead of the grade.
Yeah. He was ahead of their time.
Yeah. And the only mistake he made is that he was good at what he does, and players loved him, and they couldn't control him, though, either, too. Yeah. Because he wasn't beholden. He didn't care whose son you were or whose mom was on the committee. Or you could either play or you couldn't play.
Okay.
He called balls and strikes the way it was.
Yeah.
And as much as he did, developing, really finding and developing the talent, he was, highly scrutinized and criticized by like some committee members who may have been parents who his
son didn't get a run or something.
Well, or didn't get enough
court time,
attention.
All that. Yeah.
So, it's really quite, it's become a lot different now these days. Now the players are a lot more mobile. They can travel to, interstate and play. They can travel to all these different.
Yeah, they don't have to be in Newcastle. They can go to Maitland or somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's only a little drive up the road.
That's the thing. When I came to town, Maitland was a kind of like satellite auxiliary club.
Yeah. Okay.
Where if the players didn't make the team in Newcastle, then they would go out to Maitland.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you.
Or if a player from Maitland was really, really good,
he'd make it in Newcastle.
Then he would come into Newcastle.
Yeah.
Now it's become the reverse. Maitland has now become like the flagship club because obviously, and you go back to the grassroots, the way it's run.
Yeah.
You've got a really, really good board who have members that are recycled. The people that run that organization have played. They're players. They're also, they have a bit more objectivity too.
Yeah.
The coaches there, they have like a long-term philosophy too, especially with defense. And it makes a huge difference because they're good every year, and they're going to be good every year. You look at what happened this year.
The clean out. I do another clean out.
Yeah. But with the rep teams, like the coaches, the strategies, the fundamentals, the direction, it stays the same. All right? Because they've got a really good coach there who's like the director of coaching, Cal Wade. He's coached a lot of the junior teams up there. And he's got a pretty good eye for players, developing players that have been overlooked. Very much like John Hoyle.
Okay, yep.
And with the effort that him and like Mark Waskowitz, Pete Proctor,
okay, yeah,
all those guys have played.
Yeah.
Not only that have they played, but they were coached by, guess who? Tim Mellon.
Yeah, right.
So they had these really hard, tough work ethic.
Yeah.
Team comes first.
Instilled into them.
Yep. Hard, tough defense.
Yeah.
Taking care of the ball, not turning it over. And you see that it's all permeates all through the association.
Yeah.
All the coaches have it too. All those coaches there, they've been there through the juniors, as players. They've all come through the ranks. You look at Maitland's NBL team. Jack Edwards, or Dan Milburn. They came there from juniors, and the coaches too. Like the
all from Maitland.
Luke Boyle, all from Maitland.
Yep.
And have all been gone through there, and have been have gotten a really good apprenticeship, a good support too.
Yeah.
Good feedback. And now you've got, I think Maitland was the only team in the state this year to have under 16s, under 18s, Youth League, and NBL 1. All four of those teams, they all made the grand finals.
In the finals?
Grand finals. No other team in New South Wales has that much success. They're going to be good for years.
Yeah, that says a lot, yeah.
It says a lot, yeah. And the players that are good for him, too, you look at this guy, Billy Parsons,
okay.
who's going to be around a while, and also Jay Cole, too.
Yeah.
These are guys that are like good young players that are going to be around, and they're going to want to come back and play for Maitland too.
Yeah.
Because it's not like they have the same coach. It's not like they're rebuilding every year.
Yeah, like Newcastle.
Well, yeah.
And you're not going to get
Well, look, who are you going to play for? You're going to want to play for someone that's been in the trenches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you really going to want to play for someone that's, a bit obese, that's never played?
Yeah.
Sits there and drinks his coffee
or
while
drinks
he makes
beer.
the other players run back and forth and do sprints?
I'm with you.
What are they learning?
Yeah, I'm with
Nothing.
you.
Okay. There's one. Look at this player. He's really good. He's under 14s. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
He's under 18s, and
He's
he's ordinary.
Yeah.
Because he's been so good. He's been told he's been so good, and now he's got to play against grown men. He's got to put his big boy pants on.
Yeah,
He's not that
and
good.
he's getting hammered because of that stuff hasn't been instilled in him.
That was what Adrian Hurley talked about. He called it the Newcastle disease.
Yeah.
These young players, they might be really, really good when they're under 14s because they're 6'4" and bigger than everybody else. So everyone's on board like, oh, he's going to be great. So from that point on, he's anointed.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to try out.
Anything he does touches.
He's going to be going.
He's
going to be playing D League. He's going to be playing, country tour.
Yeah.
And then guess what? He's in youth league.
Yep.
And they stink.
Yep.
They don't really stink, but the thing is, they've been sold a pup. They've been massaged and told how good they are, because the coach that was in charge just wanted to make sure, he wanted to tell him what he wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And he didn't know how to.
And this is Newcastle.
Yeah. Well, it happens a lot of other clubs too, but it's just, put it this way: it's because it's happened in Newcastle. It's done Maitland a lot of favors.
Oh, right.
Because the ones that players that are overlooked.
Yeah, they go up there and have a good run and
they come really good, and then all
succeed. Yeah.
And Newcastle says, "Hey, you want to come back and play for us?"
No way. Yeah, no way. Yeah, but
so, they need to. What they need to do is, and I know people try and they won't get a lot of good reception because they need to hire someone who's going to come in and clean house.
Yeah.
Put up like this uniform coaching direction. Put up a business plan too,
and stick with it.
And stick with it and develop coaches and players.
Yeah.
That's not happening because there's a lot of people there that have been there forever.
Yep.
And they are scared to death. They're paranoid of being replaced.
Yep, that's right.
And and like again, that happens in a lot of clubs. But
it sounds like not much has changed in there since I left. I left probably about 15, 20 years ago, and didn't leave, but I haven't played basketball. So yeah, that was going on back then.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, but it'll change. I think every club has like a reformation, or has like a groundswell that comes up and it's like, okay, hey, let's change the direction, and it happens from within, and it's pretty good. But this is why you should have term limits for board members and for committee members, and coaches and all that.
Yeah, the people that stay there too long. It's not right.
There's coaches in there from when I was there. They were coaching and then they quit. They retired.
Yeah, and come back.
They said, "I will never come back. I will never come back and coach for this place again. I retire forever.
Yeah,
don't call me again because you hurt my feelings. I didn't get this team." And 2 years later, like, "Hey, I'm back.
Yeah, I'm coaching Division 1 team.
I'm back. Count me in. Yeah,
Division 1 team."
And it's like it's like having a relationship where you break up and you get back together. You break up. It's
back together, yeah.
Back together. It's
couldn't be too good for the body.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
The mind.
It's not gonna work out in the long run. And in the meantime, you're just dragging the kids back and forth. Yeah. So.
Yeah. What else we got?
But I tell you what, man, it's been my 30 years that I've been here. I feel really, really blessed and lucky because I've seen this stuff happen. This is before the internet, with a lot of good things happened. A lot of things didn't happen, and after the internet. But before, when it was like I think Newcastle was a whole different town. It was a really hard scrabble, industrial blue collar town.
Yeah.
It's now become like a, high tech, diverse sort of.
Yeah, I think that's just the way of the
mind.
world, man. I think that's the way everything is now.
Yeah.
Internet, we didn't have it all back then.
Yeah.
Now we do, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
But them days, mate. Do you remember the after the Falcons the drink tickets at the brewery after the Falcons games? We had the big purple drink tickets.
Yep.
We used to swap them for pints of lager. I think that was 91 they started.
Yeah.
I think they did start in 91.
Everything was so much easier back then.
Yeah.
There was no CCTV.
Yeah.
There was no driver's license scanning.
No.
You didn't have these bouncers with earpieces on.
Yep. You go any club you wanted to go in.
The first time I met Phil Lee, it was in Leroy's.
Yeah.
And Leroy's, and again, those are the old days. No CCTV, no poor lighting. None of these 6 or 8 security standing around.
Yeah.
You had Phil Lee standing there.
Yeah.
On the ramp up to the Leroy.
Yeah. Still
He'd
there.
stand up there, and if he just eyeballed you really quickly, and if he sort of sniffed it, if you passed muster, like, yeah, go ahead. If you didn't, you got to forearm to the chest, like, no, go.
Straight back down the ramp.
Straight back down, and they just tumbled back down, and no one said a word,
That's what I was saying before. I think Phil Lee found Richard Ramey's purse in the toilets at Leroy's. Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
What were did he say what the contents were?
I think that's where it all came from. Yeah, yeah.
See, in these days, it would have been like,
Oh, yeah.
It would have been like Drudge Report.
Yeah. I think
social media bait.
I think Phil Lee caught was it Neil Turner in the toilets after one of the Falcons games. He was that drunk, they were closed. He went in the toilets. Here's Neil Turner in the toilets. I think it was Phil Lee, actually. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
But
he'd never talk about it. He's a true professional, though.
So was he? Yeah, right.
With him, he could end a problem before it became a problem. Like if some guy was going to come in
and beat you up or something,
or start a fight or something like that, he would read him right away.
Yeah.
He'd approach him. He'd have him in a thumb lock.
Yeah.
And he had very, very quick hands too, very, very explosive. And just like that, he'd be walking him back out, and the guy would be helpless. And it was like it never happened again.
Mm.
Yeah, that was like a true professional. There was none of this debriefing, like help, call for radar.
Yeah, or can't touch him.
Yeah,
COVID.
It was like, do as I say, just behave.
Yeah,
you'll be all right.
Yeah.
If you don't behave, you got time out.
Yeah. So. But what about you would have seen some of the players for the NBL, especially the Falcons, Tony Jensen,
Al Green.
Al Green
did more for Foster's Light.
He did too.
Than any other advocate or sponsors. Foster's Light should give Al Green half of they should give him 500,000 shares.
Yeah, because everyone was on
more for the share price index.
Everyone was on Foster's Light.
Foster's Light.
And he was drinking Foster's Light. Man, at one stage I think wasn't the Falcons sponsored by Foster? So he was playing,
Foster's, yeah.
Yeah, that was 93, I think, yeah.
But Foster's Light was really, really hard to get because one, it was just horrible.
Yeah.
It tasted horrible, but it was like you drink that if you still want to be on, be light on your feet.
Yeah.
Which it was. So
what about some of the other players? Troy Trevelyan, he was around.
Yeah. He was a pretty serious guy,
Yeah.
And people forget he was a cop. He was a police officer.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
He was like different. So when he came out, everyone's like even high five and expect him to be, like with the dudes, and he was like, "Hey, dude, how you doing?"
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah.
He was like, "Hey, man, you sound like the banana in the tailpipe. Man, you're Troy Trevelyan. You can't be talking like that."
Is Troy Trevelyan in the studio with us? Sounds like it is. He is. Yeah. But yeah,
he was a good guy, and I think he was quiet too. Because I remember that day that it happened. That because we had Ken had us train with the team before, and also before Tom came along too.
Yep, Ken Cole.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was because the Hunters, things had gone sideways. I think Tom kind of became a proxy coach.
Yeah, he was just running the training sessions or something.
Yeah, he knew what the stuff was happening with the Hunters. And I think he was trying to do was help out guys like Jason Atkins and Dave and guys that were really, when Richard came along and everything got so toxic.
Yeah,
he just really wrecked the locker room. So he brought us along to scrimmage with the Falcons. So he became by proxy our coach.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And which is pretty good. I think it really helped. That was the first time that you had Hunters and Falcons players training together.
Yeah. I think I was there that day, man, because I think it was you were running 5-on-5. Yeah. Oh, sorry, continuous 5-on-5. It was 3 lots of 5, continuous, and the winner kept the ball and played up.
Yeah.
And I remember Tom Wisman just pulling the whistle out. Doot, doot. Listen, we're getting beat by a goddamn Hunters team. You throw Richard Ramey in there and they've won the comp or something, he said. Because there was yourself, Dave Willis, Marty
Atkins,
McLean. Yeah.
Not sure top how do I. Dave Willis was.
Was it Gav Vickers? I don't know.
I can't remember. Jason Atkins.
Yeah, Jace Atkins. Yeah. I remember that day.
And they were in the same position. They were having a tough season, and he'd come on board, and you could tell there were a couple of players there and that he wasn't going to pick the next year. Because,
Wisman.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because he had a whole different personality. Like, it happens all the time. A new coach comes in.
Yeah.
New procedures, new philosophy. What one coach likes, another one doesn't.
Yeah.
So he was like,
he wants to do his own thing too.
So he was using us to sort of as like fodder to sort of make his point across for the Falcons. And I think a lot of the reason is that we were a lot younger, we were keener. We had nothing to lose and all that. And they were coming towards the end of a long season, so they were kind of like browbeaten, and they were just sort of mailing it in.
I think they won 2 games that year, 91.
Yeah.
I think they did actually come last.
Yeah, that was a tough year. Until the following year, and then they moved to the entertainment center.
92, yes.
And he signed Paul Kuiper, too.
Yes. And
I remember seeing him for the first time.
Yeah. And the medicine ball?
I heard there was a rumor about him until I actually saw him dunk in medicine ball.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
And I was thinking, like, this guy is the abominable snowman.
Yeah.
He's huge. Like,
he's massive.
Big hands, huge shoulders, too.
Yeah.
He was like, big forehead, too.
Right.
One of those, like offensive linemen in the NFL.
He had some power.
He did.
He had some
I
power.
think he had so much muscle. That was the problem with his knee.
Yeah, too much up top.
Dunk, exactly. You see it happen.
Yeah.
Guys are,
he had too much up top.
Too much up top.
Yeah.
Pretty soon something gives.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's sad to see.
He did come back.
Yeah.
And I think he came back to the Falcons and then maybe to the Gold Coast. But he actually passed away not that long ago. So rest in peace to Big Paul Kuiper. But any other guys that you noticed, like some of the imports, maybe Aussie guys?
I think that was about. I remember Norman Taylor too.
Norman Taylor playing against the Falcons.
Hey, you remember that movie, Semi-Pro?
Yeah.
Where he wrestled the bear at halftime.
Yeah.
Playing against Norman was like wrestling the bear in the game.
Yeah, right.
The guy was super strong, really quick. He had a quick first step.
Yeah.
And
he wasn't that tall.
No, he wasn't, but he knew how to use his spacing. He was like an old school low post player.
Yeah.
And not only would he score on you, but he'd tell you how he's going to score before he did.
Did he?
And tell you about how you couldn't guard him.
Yeah.
And that it's going to be a foul.
Yeah.
So you get the ball in the post, and sure enough, they get in the ball and all that. And he said, "I'm going to score on you. I'm going to turn right on you." So sure enough, he turns right. Puts a bank shot up.
Ref calls a foul. Yeah.
I told you.
Yeah.
You can't guard me.
Oh, Storm and
said,
Norman.
well, who the hell else can,
Yeah.
Is there anybody else in Australia that can guard you? Yeah.
Storm and Norman Taylor, the charcoal chicken. He's running the charcoal
Falcons
chicken
played him the following year. They brought the new Reggie Smith out.
Yeah.
He scored 40 on Reggie Smith.
Hang on.
When they
Norman Taylor?
Norman Taylor did. When they scrimmaged West Sydney, at West Sydney for preseason, they brought out Reggie Smith.
That was 95?
95.
Yeah.
He scored 40 on Reggie Smith.
Really?
I saw that. I thought, damn,
really?
Now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Storm and Norman. Jeez.
Storm and Norman. He had this like Eric Cooks.
Yeah.
He had this unstoppable drop step.
Some sort of knack of the game.
Yeah, he would get it, and he would take that first quick drop step, and then he would get that separation, and then just put it right off the glass.
Yeah.
And you couldn't
guard it.
You were going to block it. You could not guard it.
Yeah. Get foul called.
And if you fronted him, he would just seal you. And West Sydney were smart enough; they would swing the ball really quick. He would seal you, and then he would get you that way. But they just knew how to use him.
West Sydney had a good team. They had Greg Hubbard.
Yeah.
Norman Taylor, of course.
Yeah.
I think
Alphonse.
Yeah. Actually, who was the imports? Emery Atkinson and Norman.
Yeah.
And Neil Turner played for them.
Yep.
Yeah, that year too.
Yeah, they were pretty tough.
Yeah, they were tough that year.
There were no easy teams. All those teams were tough.
So that's what I'm saying. They were the true second division teams.
Yeah.
They were guys that sort of got dropped from the NBL, imports and Aussies.
Yeah.
And it made that a quality comp.
Yeah.
A true second division.
Yeah. Or guys had played a few years and they got a couple more years in it.
Exactly.
Or even imports that were here and they decided to get a new import.
Exactly. I remember Kent Lockhart. He played for the Spectres. Yeah, he played for Dandenong in the Seabull the year after.
Yeah.
Dominated. But yeah. Yeah, but is there anything else you want to let us know on the Falcons podcast while we're here before we wrap up the show?
No, I could just say, man, I'm just so blessed and so lucky to be here and to be having gone through these experiences, because, I say stuff to my own son about what happened, and he sort of can't believe it. How the game has changed, how sports changed, everything has. And I think it's really good. I'll tell you what, I've met a lot of really good people. A few snakes out there, yeah. But you figure that out quickly, and you get that. You cut your grass short.
You get that everywhere.
You cut your grass short, but then most of them, the majority of them, good people.
Yeah.
That I still see like today.
Yeah. And you've stayed in Newcastle the whole time.
Yeah.
So,
and even though I play for different clubs, but people like that who you've been on the road with them, you've been in tough games with them too, and it's always a really good venue. It attracts a lot of good people too.
Broadmeadow or
I think in basketball in general.
Yeah, okay.
And probably in Australia too. Now that it's sort of gotten a lot more mobile.
Yeah. The game definitely has got a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And more skilled too.
Yeah, and what we were saying before about the big man, the inside, outside big man they are these days. There's no true 7-footers.
There's no big, bulky power forwards. Too.
Yeah. They're all step out shooters.
Yeah.
And can dribble.
You can dribble you have to. Yeah, and they have adjusted very much like the Europeans. In that they have really got the right coaches in the right place. Most of them. There's a few pretenders out there still.
Yeah.
But you can tell by the pretenders because they're volunteers.
Yeah, okay.
And they're usually like they're a lot of volunteers. They've just been around by osmosis, not because they've achieved anything, but
by default.
By default.
Yeah, okay.
And some of them are good people and all that, but I always tell these young players that are coming up and they say, "Oh, I didn't make this team, I didn't make that team," and all that, And I tell them, I said, "Do never," and this is what I told my own son too, when he didn't make under 16s. Never let a volunteer who's quit on the club and come back and quit. Never let a volunteer, especially like someone that can't even tie his own shoes, tell you you're not good enough. Especially someone that's never played the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone that's never put their ass on the line.
Yeah. Never played
because they're they're not coaches. They're just
fanboys.
Just fanboys.
And
it comes out, And if you keep trying, if you keep practicing enough, eventually you're going to find a coach that gets paid.
Yep.
That gets paid to do his position, makes a living out of it,
and loves it,
and doesn't know you from bar soap. Doesn't know who your parents. He just sees you playing from across the gym.
And no bullshit,
exactly,
no baggage, no, just playing. Yeah.
That's what I told my son Keegan too when he made under 18s state team, because the guy that picked him wasn't from New South Wales country.
All right.
He was from the Metro. Curtis Sardi.
Okay. Yeah.
He was originally from Bankstown, but he was also, I think, helping out, doing a lot of coaching programs for the country teams.
Yeah.
And all these other coaches that just passed on. Like he was like probably the first one cut. And he sees him play down in the country tour in Albury, and he picks him right away.
Yeah.
And it's like, there you go. That guy didn't know you. He was from Sydney. He gets paid to coach.
Yeah.
Always go by what his word. All right. Don't listen to volunteers.
Yeah. Don't listen to them or people.
There's a reason why they're volunteers.
Exactly, yeah. I was going to say that. But through the 90s, like even from 91 till the Falcons folded in 99 or 98, wherever it was, you would have seen some good, like, I know that era, those 10 years or so, would be probably the best era I've seen of, like remember the Geelong Supercats came to town, played the Falcons, and then you had the Townsville Suns come to town, and Brisbane Bullets and stuff like that. We seen guys playing like Cecil Exum, Dante's dad, stuff like that, So that's what I take out of that era. We've seen a lot of guys like that, and especially guys like Rob Rose and true NBL legends, Leroy Loggins, all them, James Crawford. We've seen them all come to town, and play in that era. It was gold against the Falcons. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. And hey, I love your work. I love the fact that you're keeping the
dream alive.
The dream alive. But not only that, but you're keeping the stories alive.
Yes.
Because once you forget that, those are gone forever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there who've been involved, a lot longer than I have.
Yeah.
That really, really appreciate that there's no venue for them to talk about it anymore.
And things that we've spoken about.
Yeah, exactly.
It would remind them of other things that they've forgotten about. Because I know this conversation that we've had today, and even the other 2 episodes with Sean Dennis and Ken Cole, I've brought up things that, hey, I forgot about that, because something they said reminded me. Yep. So that's what we need to do. We need to put all the Falcon stuff down.
Hey, I tell you what, there's a lot more other players in town.
Yep.
Old heads like me that would got a few more interesting, better stories to tell you.
There's nothing beats the Richard Ramey stories, mate. All right, man.
He's a shooting star. I heard they kicked him out of Guantanamo Bay.
Really?
Yeah, because he was causing too much problems.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think his passport's been stamped. Never come back to Australia. Alrighty, no worries. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And it was a great chat. Alright, guys, if you want to give the page a like, and share this podcast. See you all next time on episode number 4. That was number 3. This is the Former Falcons podcast. Catch you all